Owen never should have gone back to the Harrington Hotel. Even the locals told him that the place was dead. Not just abandoned, but dead, like a body that should have been buried but instead was left to rot in the middle of town. Its windows had been nailed shut, its front steps cracked and warped by decades of rain, and the brass letters of its name had fallen one by one until the sign above the entrance read only RNGN. The silence outside was heavy enough to smother his thoughts, and yet, beneath it, he swore he heard something faint, a sound too delicate to belong to the wind. It was music. A piano drifting faintly from inside, a broken melody rising and falling like waves against the walls. Every note seemed muffled, as though underwater, yet it carried enough strength to tug at him. Owen told himself it was impossible. No electricity, no guests, no life. But his feet moved anyway, crunching broken glass as he stepped into the lobby. The inside smelled like mildew and wet ash. Wallpaper peeled like burned flesh. Furniture sat shrouded in sheets, coated with years of dust, as though the hotel itself had been waiting for this exact moment. The piano's notes grew sharper as he climbed the creaking stairs, each step screaming beneath his weight. The sound guided him to the third floor, down a hallway whose carpet was eaten away to its threads. The walls leaned inward like they were trying to swallow the corridor whole. He stopped at a door near the end, room 306. The brass numbers were crooked, the 0 dangling by a single nail. The air was colder here, pressing damp and heavy against his skin, and when he leaned closer, he realized the music wasn't coming from behind the door at all. It was coming through it, as though the wood itself had been hollowed into a throat. His key, a skeleton key he'd found at the reception desk, slid into the lock too smoothly, as if the door had been waiting for it. A soft click, then the groan of swollen wood, and the door opened into a room drowning in stillness. The piano stopped. Dust swirled in the pale moonlight leaking through the blinds. The furniture was perfectly arranged, bed made, curtains tied, a lamp upright on the nightstand. Too perfect, as though no one had ever touched it, as though it were a set built only to be looked at, not lived in. And there, resting neatly on the bedspread, was an old leather suitcase. Its corners were cracked, its handle wrapped in faded twine, and its latches were trembling. Just barely, like something inside was breathing. Inside, folded dresses the color of stale tea, shirts with moth-bitten collars, the aromatic dust of someone else's life collapsing. He swept the fabric aside and found a journal with a damp spine. The cover stuck to his palm when he peeled it open. On the first page, ink had bled into the paper like rot, but the sentence was still legible. If you hear the piano, don't answer the door. Don't ever answer the door. He nearly laughed. A sharp, nervous leak of air. Then came the knock. Not on the door, on the wall. 3 patient taps, spaced like a teacher correcting him. 1, 2, 3. The room absorbed the sound and fed it back thinner. His flashlight beam trembled as he laid the journal on the bed. The next knocks climbed. Lower wall, mid-wall, higher, as if fingertips were raking upward inside the plaster, searching for a seam. He pressed his palm to the wallpaper. It was cool and damp and moving, a sluggish crawl beneath the paper, like breath behind a mask. Silence pooled. Dust floated. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled. Then the chandelier hook above the bed tapped against its screw, once, twice, answering someone unseen. The piano returned, timid, as if embarrassed by what had happened while it was gone. Owen backed toward the nightstand, where the lamp's ceramic base had a hairline crack. Beside it lay a small brass key, irregular teeth, colder than the air. He touched it and felt a stiffness travel up his arm like old water waking. The suitcase's lid shut itself with a slap. He flinched so hard the flashlight skittered to the rug. The room's corners pulled tight, geometry reasserting itself like a threat. He crouched, breath shallow, and the journal slid off the bed at his knee, opening to a later page. The ink ran like a river reversing. Words softened, then hardened in fresh shapes. He read, "Don't knock back. Below it, in a different hand, smaller, frantic. If the door asks your name, do not answer. From the hallway came the soft drag of weight across carpet. Something out there had time. Something out there was listening for the wrong word. He picked up the key, the journal, the flashlight, and told himself he would leave now while the building pretended to be still. He made it 2 steps before the doorknob turned with a courtesy that was worse than violence. The knob turned slowly, politely, like a hotelier's hand, demonstrating that the service still functioned. Owen held his breath until it burned. The latch clicked, but the door did not open. Something on the other side tested the fit, then let it reset, then tested again. The piano crawled under the sound, playing a scale like a staircase with 1 step missing. He reached for the bolt that wasn't there. The whisper came through the gap between door and jamb, warm with human moisture. Owen. The journal thudded against his ribs where he'd tucked it, suddenly heavier. He hadn't given anyone here his name. He hadn't spoken it aloud. The whisper came again, more conversational now, as if asking a favor through a chain-link fence. Owen, could you? He took a step back and his heel struck the suitcase. The lamp trembled. The whisper smiled. Open! The journal slipped free and fell, face down, then flipped itself over, pages riffling in a damp wind that did not exist. Words blattered, ran, and gathered, until one short command stood clear, printed as if by a stamp. Use the other key. The closet. He hadn't noticed a lock on it before. He turned and aimed the flashlight. The beam made the closet door's paint look greasy. A keyhole winked under the tarnish. Behind him, the doorknob turned harder. Wood groaned. The polite voice sanded itself down to a rasp. Owen, I'm cold. The wall, meanwhile, had begun to breathe again. Paper lifting and settling, as if something very large were deciding which route would take him. He forced the small brass key into the closet's throat. It resisted, then relented with a sick, wet click. The door yawned a fraction. Inside was not hangers and motel musk. Inside was dark, so thick the flashlight's beam recoiled from it as from glass. Air exhaled from that dark. Sweet, wet, metallic. He thought of basements flooded with summer, of lilies in a jar long after the water turned. Owen, the voice at the hall said for the 3rd time, tone gone flat, like the lid of a piano dropping. The door tested the latch. The journal's pages tore themselves to show him a sentence that might have been written yesterday or 50 years ago. Do not answer, do not knock, do not speak your true name inside the Harrington. He didn't answer. He stepped into the dark. The closet door closed softly behind him, in the old manner of doors that have mastered regret. Darkness has textures. This one was slick and fibrous, damp against his cheeks, as though the air had been combed with tongues. He shuffled forward, one hand out, expecting boards. The floor under his soles had give, like carpet soaked through, like fruit going from ripe to sorry. His light gave up after a foot of beam, then nothing. The dark ate it as a tax. Behind him, somewhere far as a childhood house, the hotel door rattled, and the voice on the other side lost its shape. He kept moving because stillness felt like consent. The closet unspooled into a hall that could not fit inside the hotel, too long, too low, bending gently as intestines bend. He passed a curve where the walls were closer than breath, and something brushed his knuckles from within the paper. 5 quick taps, like a blind musician counting in. He didn't look. He counted his own steps instead, making numbers into spells. 32, 33, 30. Light found him again, but not his. A bead of it trembled ahead, sour as a refrigerator bulb. As he neared, the walls resolved into layers. Wallpaper upon something older, all bubbled and blistered. Names had been written between the bubbles, not carved. Grown, the way a scar writes itself on skin. He read a row because he could not read, and recognized none until he did. Mara Hale, his grandmother's maiden name. The date beside it was not a date but a melody scribble, 5 ascending marks and a rest. He swallowed. The hall bent again and hung a picture where the bend should be. The frame was gilt gone green, the glass fogged. He wiped an arc. The photo was of the Harringtons' lobby when it was far younger. On the reception desk, a shallow tray of keys. In the tray, a skeleton key with a clean grip. In the foreground, a woman turning as if surprised by the camera. Her mouth was open. You could not tell if she was singing or warning. She looked like Mara in the family album he kept pretending he would scan someday. She looked like someone about to say, "Don't." Voices began, a crowd of them, stitched low and high, the vowel of grief stretched into violin. They overlapped, called names, answered names, corrected names. The walls puckered. He clutched the journal and understood too late that its wet weight was not water. These pages had been carried through this specific dark by other specific hands, and the ink had eaten their thumbprints. He reached another door, not wood, but the idea of a door, backlit by that weak bead of light. He wanted to rehearse the rules. Don't answer, don't knock, don't speak your true name, but the dark pressed a finger to his lips and pushed him through. The room on the other side was a cube, with wrong proportions, floor too soft, ceiling too low. A single bulb hung from a cord and swayed in a draft that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The light carved a swing of brightness across surfaces written to exhaustion. Names, not in lines, not in pride, in layers, chaotic, desperate. Names on the floor where feet had dragged. Names on the ceiling where only a ladder or a miracle could reach. Names written between other names, like weeds, deliberating between stones. The fresh ones glistened. The old ones had gone gray like healed skin. Owen stepped around a ring of letters and found his stomach fold in on itself. Owen Thorne. Cut deep, then deepened, the edges shiny with oil as if someone had been keeping it fresh. He crouched. The cut marks were not quite straight, as if made by a left hand in a hurry. His own left hand trembled over the grooves like a tuning fork over middle C. The piano resumed, very close now, as if the room itself owned hammers and strings. The bulb ticked with heat and swung. The journal surged like a hooked fish. Pages flapped to a center that had been underscored until the paper bruised. You were always meant to stay. Beneath, an annotation smaller than an apology, unless you return what the room lent you. "What did you lend me?" he said, before he remembered the rule about speaking. The voices in the walls brightened at the sound of his mouth. The suitcase was there. He did not see it arrive, but it was on a little table that hadn't existed a breath ago. The twine was newly tied. The latches were patient. He knew panic is a machine that eats time. And he had none to spare, so he opened it. Clothes he didn't own. A pressed flower that had triumphed over its own color. A piano key, ivory cracked in a smile. And at the bottom, wrapped in ledger paper, a single word cut from stiff card. His name, stenciled, the letters clean. He understood then what the hotel had borrowed from him the moment he stepped in. Not his body, not yet, his name. "Take it back," he said, softer, and slid the card into the journal between the undrinkable pages. The walls flexed, disappointed. Fingers like smears reached and retracted. The bulb's swing slowed. Somewhere behind one wall, a bench creaked as a pianist stood. He walked to the place where his name had been carved and pressed the journal against it. The paper stuck with a hungry sound, then melted, fibers threading into grooves until they were part of the cut. For a breath, he felt the room consider him as a candidate for furniture. Then the cut letters sighed and collapsed inward, the grooves filling like a wound resolving. The bulb pinged and died. The dark did not. He moved by memory, hand on wall, counting steps, counting breaths, counting the beats between distant thunder and nearer silence. He found the idea of a door by its cooler draft. When he pulled, the passage behind it was short, the closet a closet again. He shouldered out into room 306's stale air, the hotel's geometry snapping back, sulky and ordinary. The piano had stopped. He left the key on the nightstand where the lamp's crack made a quiet, satisfied line. He did not close the hotel's front door on his way out. In the streetlight, rain began. first polite, then decided. He walked until he could no longer hear the Harrington breathing through its boards. In his pocket, the empty journal sagged, lighter by one name. His name came when he called it now, and he vowed not to spend it indoors after dark. Behind him, in a room that loved too hard, the suitcase lifted its lid to see who would knock next.